Hi, this is Mary. I am just popping in to give the overview for the bizdecoder.com template labeled Communications Planning Audience Matrix. So if you are downloading this, you know that you're trying to get ready to do all of your corporate communications planning. And the first thing you need to do is to get a very clear view of all the concerns of every audience that you're going to impact as you communicate within and outside of your organization over the next year. And so we always start with an audience matrix analysis. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do some visuals and play some audio for you of me just talking through the big picture. And then we'll pop back in a moment here, and I'll just talk a little bit about the bits and pieces in the filled out template. So as you downloads from bizdecoder.com, you'll always get the blank template that you can use, as well as an exemplar that's already been completed with sample data, so you can see how you would normally be completing that planning document or that campaign document. And so I'm just going to pause here and just give you some visuals, and I'll do some audio talking so that you can get the big picture of why we would need this audience planning matrix. And the core of this tool is when a big decision is made within any organization, and that can be a large global organization, that can be a community organization, a church, a school, a government, a growing organization, and they have made a decision about a change, a brand, a growth, a merger, a divestiture, changes in workforce structure, and they seek to communicate. And it seems really simple to communicate, but there's a handful of considerations where when we say go and everybody can envision the communications, I say stop, let's consider all of the audiences. And so I'm just going to explain here why it's so important to plan, because once the cat's out of the bag, it is a D- failure, because once the cat's out of the bag, it's a D- failure if you have to backtrack, if you have to restate, because the stock value has already dropped when we have lost confidence. And a lot of there's a risk in losing trust in employees. So you have concerns over mass exodus. You have a risk with customer trust. You have a risk with vendor and third-party relationship trust. You have a risk in shareholder trust, media trust when you backtrack. And so what's important is, before you push out communications for what you think is a good idea, you have to scrape every communication in anticipation of the questions from all of the audiences. So this is why often when you see media interviews, you'll see a CEO speaking to things like value, because value doesn't say employees will be paid more, because shareholders don't like that. And we don't say that we're going to return more revenue and margin that will be returned to shareholders, because employees are going to question that. Customers also want to know that any investment on either side is going to deliver results and value to them. And then the communities in which we work and live, corporate citizenship, we want to make sure that as a company is announcing growth or change, that those communities' concerns are considered. And so anytime we want to speak positively to any one of those audiences, we have to kind of scrape that message to consider the other audience. This would be, you have to imagine, it would be like having a husband and a wife, and a husband and a wife, and a husband and a wife, these multiple audiences, all saying things that are in agreement. And every discussion has multiple sides. And so we have to take these communications and very carefully evaluate the concerns first in a matrix of every audience's concerns, and then their concerns considered over the timeline of a change. So a change may occur quickly within an organization, and it may occur over an 18-month period. And so we have to say, what is visible to the public audience at this point in time? They will visibly see us investigating, asking questions, interviewing, reviewing processes, evaluating costs, comparing against vendor costs. What are they going to be worried about? Employees will be worried about their jobs. Customers will be worried about consistency of delivery of supply chain, movement. Shareholders will be concerned about any sort of fluctuations, and so on. So at that point, they see this evidence, and what you want to do is get in front of that evidence so that you provide information that drives confidence and consistency and would be just as consistent at month 1 as well as month 18 in the change process. And this again can be for a church that might be merging with a couple other churches in the area. But it's important to maintain consistent messaging throughout change. And so there might be something learned midpoint through the process. But we want to say, as we said in the beginning, we're seeking to ensure that we achieve X. As part of seeking to ensure that we achieve X, this decision has been made in alignment with that. And so, again, we carry on trying to do that. So now I'm going to explain the tool. So when a leader says, send out a bunch of emails, put together a newsletter, let's do a video, stop for a minute. You put together the messages first, then you think about what channels those messages are going to go into. And just as a starting point of the types of communications plans that go on, the types of things that these messages get drawn into are leader speaking points that we call back pocket messages, which is just the things they should say all day, every day when they get interviewed and questioned, meetings, briefings, reporting sessions, approvals sessions, newsletters, surveys, email campaigns, email cascades, web content, which can be text, reference documents, guides and wizards, videos, request forms, request documents, other forms, media briefs, media packets, trainings, HR notification sessions, where even there might be selected people joining, security teams, if difficult information is being shared in an organization, knowledge transfer sessions or processes, digital, live discussions, recordings, documentation, interviews, on-site, off-site, and virtual meetings, agile style co-creation meetings, so meaning kind of solutioning, ideating meetings, templates, reusable tools, discussion guides, communications toolkits that are kind of a full reference to everything somebody might need to utilize to communicate to different audiences, fielding inquiries, core reference documents like a roadmap image, a pictorial one-pager that might share the overall change roadmap, progress updates, and kind of a roadmap of what change will look like and where we are if it's a long kind of process. And so that's just the beginning of who are we talking to? What are their concerns over the change period? And what should we be preparing for them to see? And what should we not be saying and claiming? So we don't want to raise our hands and say, this is going to be great for you. And that means that the share stock value is going to drop because it's not great for the other side. So you really have to be careful that you're scraping your messages and being thoughtful. So now I will go through the matrix tool that we use before we put together the communication plan, before we do interviews to understand what the key messages need to be for each audience, before we start producing scripts for videos and that kind of thing. We need to understand what the universe is as far as audiences, because when we're communicating within an organization, it's ears and eyeballs, and nothing else really matters. There's nothing else in the world. There's no car in the world that's going to react to our announcements, but it's going to be people and what they see and hear. And the key is we want to be a good source of information, because the minute the formal communications centers are not trusted, the water cooler gossip becomes the best source. And in an internet world, social media world, that water cooler is strong. The social gossip is strong. The backlash is strong. It can get momentum before any formal communication is put together. So it needs to be done thoughtfully and transparently, meaning respect that everyone in the world is intelligent and isn't up for a veneer or BS. And so even again, if you're a school, if you're a smaller organization, the key is to be speaking and listening and speaking. So we'll go ahead now. Okay, so wrapping up that discussion of the communications planning audience matrix, I'll just give a couple examples of what you're finding here when you download the blank template as well as the completed template that is labeled as an exemplar. So in the matrix, you are dividing up, you work with your team, you work with all of your departments. Your corporate communications change management team is going to interview and explore all of the departments that may be impacted if you're doing a large global change, a merger, an acquisition, just implementing a new technology, changing the way that you present your brand externally. You're going to go through every audience and understand how they're going to be impacted. So with every audience, we look at, as we're communicating forward, we look at in their position, from their point of view, as this change is announced, what are the strengths? How are this group's beliefs likely to buoy the efforts? The weaknesses, what are the risks in the beliefs this group has, or the concerns this group has? The opportunities, how can you leverage this group's impact in order to drive the messages forward, and the threats. So if you under or poorly communicate to this group, what would be the negative impact to the project, the initiative overall? And then you look at the timeline in the initial planning stages. And then as the communication or the large change gets underway and you start implementing the change, you're going to delineate in very concrete terms the exact timelines and exact gates of the timeline of your project. So a core reorg project, and then you're in the data gathering phase. You're going to delineate when you move from the data gathering phase, as you get into clarity and you're able to communicate with clarity what the plans are, core team findings, the rollout, the actual changes in your organization, whatever this large global change is, you're going to go through and delineate right to the end, where it's the final announcements and the metrics and the tracking and the feedback, and then lessons learned and looping back and doing all of the other things that you need to do to continue to drive that forward in real life. So in each of those phases, you are going to analyze every single group and organization and what their perspective is in each of those categories. So an example in an organization might be you delineate between the core audience and then broader audiences that have an impact on the success of your campaign or your initiative. So you might in an organization have a group that would be the HR organization leadership team, the HR departments management, and all the other subgroups, HR departments liaisons to other business groups and outside groups, the HR department employees and members, and so on and so forth. Getting further into the detail, they'll have different awareness, different concerns, different data they need to control their business objectives. And then there is the core project team, the planning team, the change management team, the extended project team, global organizations leadership. You can kind of go into all the different divisions of that. The different legal teams, the different departments within your organization, and then you'll have liaisons, whatever your business relationship management teams are within your organization. You would be looking at what part of our sales team is communicating with outside vendors who would need to be aware of and handle questions from outside vendors who see your company changing and have concerns. And then you get into all the broader external concerns of, for example, PR organizations, your liaisons that connect with the PR organizations, outside charities that you partner with, the communities in which you work and live, and all the representatives of that community that give acceptance and promotion of your company versus negative press, shareholder news and shareholders, customers, certainly all your groupings of your customer organization and all the different ways you communicate with them. And then very importantly, your employees who need to know that throughout this process of change and all the intended change, that they will be cherished and that their careers will be honored, and that they will be given notification of large changes underway, and they will have resources to know what to do. And along with that, you would want to make sure that you're covering all bases in the right cascade, which is letting your organization's leadership know what they need to know in order to support the directors below them and the managers below them and the employee teams, the supervisors, so that everybody is hearing announcements of change and getting the latest data, but in a way that enables them to partner with the leader above them and decide the right plan for any impacts on the immediate team. So this is what your planning matrix is, and that gets populated, which throughout this process of change, what is their concern? What do they need to know? What are the resources? And it's both two directions. It's feedback tools as well as communication tools. So there always has to be a two-way communication channel enabled for all your audiences. And then you carry forward and also enable this tool to let you handle new information as new information is discovered and it unfolds, the project unfolds. You would want to be able to say, oh, we know the impacts to this organization. We built a channel for updating them, and we know their communications tools. They get updated weekly by their supervisor, or they get updated by a newsletter every month. We know how to provide the Q&A. We know how to, put out listening feedback channels. So this is how you start anything, any sort of communication you do within a large organization. Before you run out and shoot an email or make an announcement or make a video or make a decision, you want to make sure you've got this communications audience analysis matrix settled so that you can say, okay, we're covering all bases. You don't want to say something really wonderful to employees and then have shareholders concerned. Employees are getting a pay raise. Shareholders are concerned. Your stock drops and then you can't give your employees a pay raise. That would be a bad change management communications approach. You want to make sure that you're giving the right information and messages that align with all of these groups in order to make sure that all of the groups see the stability and they see the long-term path in your immediate short-term decisions. So I hope that helps. Go ahead and download the planning matrix from bizdecoder.com and let me know of your questions or feedback, and we can always produce more. Peace.